this series. So it was a Game 7. They stand eye to eye with history, and they did not blink. The Heat are going to the NBA Finals.
So it's been a month since Giannis took the podium bravely after losing Game 5 to the Miami Heat and proclaiming how there was no such thing as failure in sports, right? Everything's a journey. Sometimes you win, and sometimes you lose. It's all about building. When things go bad, it doesn't mean it's a failure. You're not going to win it every year. And I was so touched by that, and I couldn't help but relate that message to the 2023 Boston Celtics, who, were just eliminated by the Miami Heat in the Eastern Conference Finals. The Boston Celtics season was certainly not a failure. Even though they ran back the same team as they had last year that took them to the NBA Finals, plus adding Malcolm Brogdon, who, averaged 20 points per game. He's a great defender. He'd come off the bench. Still, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that throughout the NBA regular season, this Celtics team lost focus and effort was sometimes not there. And, it doesn't matter they squandered the 1 seed by having such, tough losses against great teams such as the Orlando Magic 3 times. The Houston Rockets, who, I know they had the worst record in the league, but young team, they really would bring it every night. OKC, without their star player, I think the Celtics lost by about 40. Didn't matter. The brakes were on that night. And the Utah Jazz, Danny Ainge's rebuilding team. Those are tough guys over in Utah. It doesn't matter. So the Celtics had the 2 seed going into the NBA playoffs. Tough adversity. Second best record in the NBA. Definitely not a failure. Even though the Celtics had quite possibly the easiest playoff path I could fathom, genuinely. It seemed like a foregone conclusion that the Boston Celtics would be playing the Miami Heat in the first round. The Heat were surely a talented team and could handle the lowly Atlanta Hawks. But no, it was, to everybody's surprise, Atlanta pulled off the upset. So the Celtics would get Atlanta. And definitely didn't lose to Atlanta when their second option got suspended by pushing a ref. And they sweated it out, through 6 games and almost lost Game 6 and to force a Game 7 at home. For essentially an 8 seed. Not a failure. They learned their lessons. So they moved on and ultimately got paired with the Philadelphia 76ers, who have 2. When I think of winning, in the dictionary, I'd look up James Harden and Joel Embiid. And so, it doesn't matter that the Celtics lost Game 1 to the 76ers without Joel Embiid, who, he won the MVP, but they had a lot of gritty other players on the team, and they, James Harden going for 40 like it was 2018. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter that the Celtics managed to lose twice at home, continuously making home court advantage seem irrelevant. Doesn't matter. They had to go to Philly. Tatum was cold all game and he hit some shots at the end, and they would go to 7, and then they blew the doors out because, as we all know, when you're battling a Doc Rivers-led team, he's always going to close out the series. And dudes like James Harden and Joel Embiid are ice cold. You can always count on them when you need them most, and the Celtics defied those odds, winning Game 7. So clearly not a failure. I mean, we're already building this underdog case. And, it seemed inevitable that the Celtics would play the Milwaukee Bucks in the Eastern Conference Finals. Everyone assumed it throughout the year. And obviously, because this whole message from Giannis is due to getting eliminated, the Celtics would not play the Bucks in the Eastern Conference Finals, but rather the Miami Heat. And, they'd enter the series. It was the 2 seed versus the 8 seed. An 8 seed with a lot of undrafted players, and, they got a little streaky. They might have had a bottom of the league offense, but, they were cooking. So the Celtics really just had to fight because it was going to be tough anyways. The odds were stacked against them, even though the Miami Heat were missing their second option for the whole series with a broken hand, and another scorer was out the whole series too. Doesn't matter. Because the Celtics roster, they were already overachieving, right? Throughout this playoffs, nobody expected them to get this far, except Vegas. But when you really think about it, all the Celtics had was a first All-NBA player, a second-team All-NBA player, the sixth man of the year, the defending defensive player of the year, and a second-team All-Defender. So obviously expectations were low that the Celtics would be able to put up a fight, take this series 7, obviously. So the Celtics get bounced, right? And here we are, because it's a learning experience. This team is building, even though this core of Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and Marcus Smart's been together for 6 years. What is 6 years anyways? That's not that long of a time. Yeah, I know this is essentially their third squandered finals chance. Whether you look back at the bubble when they were a top seed losing to the Miami Heat, they learned and then lost to the Warriors when they could have gone up 3-1 last year and proceeded to turn it over and play terrible defense. They learned. And yeah, I know all of those mistakes became apparent throughout the regular season and playoffs and really exposed themselves against the Miami Heat. But this team learned because they're building. They're learning from last year and most certainly learning from this year. Because next year will definitely be different, as history has shown us. Because this Boston Celtics season was definitely not a failure.